Know Christ, a television ministry of the Lutheran Church of Peace in Platteville, Wisconsin. Here is your host, Reverend Jeff Pedersen.
Well, today we're going to be talking about the parable of, the three stewards. And so I'm going to be reading from Matthew chapter 25, verses 14 through 30. And this is a parable that Jesus spoke. And I think it's a parable where Jesus gives us a lot of wisdom, understanding how it is to live the Christian life. And, just kind of how God is operating in our lives when it comes to, how we manage things in our lives. And so I'm going to read. Here again, this is Matthew chapter 25, verses 14 through 30. Again, it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his property to them. To one he gave 5 talents of money, to another 2 talents, and to another 1 talent, each according to his ability. Then he went on his journey. The man who had received the 5 talents went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 more. So also the one with the 2 talents gained 2 more. But the man who had received the 1 talent went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had received the 5 talents brought the other 5. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 5 talents. See, I have gained 5 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. The man with the 2 talents also came. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 2 talents. See, I have gained 2 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. Then the man who had received the 1 talent came. Master, he said, I knew that you are a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid. And I went out and hid your talent in the ground. See, here is what belongs to you. His master replied, you wicked, lazy servant. So you knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed. Well then, you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers, so that when I returned, I would have received it back with interest. Take the talent with him and give it to the one who has the 10 talents. For everyone who has will be given more, and he will have in abundance. Whoever does not have, even what he has will be taken from him. And throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And so here I've just read the story, so I don't know if I need to repeat it again, but we think about who this master is, this master who now goes on a journey, and we see this as being God, and certainly this is a parable, so we're always kind of looking at what is the message of the parable, and we don't try to read into it too much, because I would hate to give an argument for the deists who believe that God created everything and then left, and will eventually one day come back, and so we just kind of think, God's nowhere in our presence, God is nowhere in our midst, and that God has got to be at least 5 galaxies away. But I think about that, God is always with us, but still the idea of the parable here is that God has entrusted us. He's given to the people, we are the stewards of the earth. He's entrusted to us the care of creation. He's entrusted to us the care of the church, of the gospel. That he didn't give this work to the angels to do, but rather he's given it to us, the humans, his people. To say that I expect you to take care of the environment. And here again I shared, I think it was last week or a couple weeks ago, about my time in Norway and just kind of the concern about global warming. And I know that some scientists say that it has to do with the carbon dioxides that are put into the air. But then other scientists now are saying, well, no, it's because the Earth that is tilted at a 23.5-degree axis has shifted just so slightly, and all it would have to do is shift slightly, and that's going to change our environment. And here again, I always kind of think, well, if global warming has to do with what we are doing, then we can work to change that. But if it has to do with the shift in the angle of the Earth to the sun, well, that's something that we have no control over. It's not like we can have a bunch of rockets somehow chained to the Earth and tilted back. You know, it's one of those things that only God can change the axis of the Earth. But here again, getting back to the parable, is that you got a person who's got a lot of money, and he's leaving, he's going on a journey, and obviously he can't take it with him, and so he's leaving it there, and he's entrusting it to people. And he's got 3 people that he's entrusted it to. One of them, he gives to them 5 talents, another he gives 2 talents, and to another he gives 1. And so we think, well, what is a talent? Well, back in those days, a talent was $1,000. Now, even in our day today, for me, $1,000 is a lot of money. If somebody were to give me a $1,000 check, it's just like, oh boy, that's very generous. But during Jesus' day, that $1,000, I mean, that'd be like the income of a number of lifetimes. It's more money than what you could spend in your lifetime. And so to the one he gives 5. And then to the other he gives 2, and then the other he gives 1. Now, right away when you add all this up, let's see, 5, 6, 7, 8, that there would be 8 talents that this master has that he's now distributing amongst these 3, that maybe he should have just divided it up evenly amongst the 3. That every one of them would have had a little over 2 talents, but that's not the way that he did it. And that's interesting, isn't it? I've heard a lot of people say in life, well, that person wasn't dealt a good hand of cards in life, so to speak. Or it's not fair. You know, this person was born and was given so much, and here I am, poor little me. If only I would have, been blessed with all the talents that this person has had, whether it's finances, land, or just the intelligence or having the abilities to do a lot of different things, then my life would be great. So here again, we're always making this argument. Things just are not fair. Okay, well, here again, this is the way God is the one who sets up life, and he's the one who, goes about things. But here again, we look at, why did he give to the one 5 and one to the one 2 and to the other one 1? Well, first of all, I would think that all 3 of these people would be very thankful, because even the one who was given the 1 talent thinking, wow, he's entrusted me with a lot of money, and I'm so thankful for that, and I certainly want to do my very best to be a good steward of it. So rather than always being worrying about what we don't have, maybe we ought to be thankful for what we have and to work with what we have. And the amazing things that we can do. Now, I've been a Milwaukee Bucks basketball fan all my life. And for the most part, the Bucks, well, there was a time when I was young when the Bucks were really good. But for the most part in my life, the Bucks have been kind of like perennial losers. I mean, you go back, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and they had a record of 15-67. I think I was about the only one that was still watching the Bucks play. And I always kind of wondered, well, maybe we don't have the money in Milwaukee like some of these other places have to be able to sign all of these good players. Or maybe we don't have the right coach. I don't know. But after a while, it's just like, well, I enjoy watching the Bucks even though I don't expect them to win any of their games. And then there was this coach who had a lot of success with a certain team that had all these, in a sense, all-star players. And then he went and coached another team, and that team was blessed with all these all-star players. And so with both of these teams, he won numerous championships. And then all of a sudden, he's kind of touted as being the greatest coach in the history of the National Basketball Association. Well, here again, hats off to him. I think, coaching a bunch of superstar players, there's got to be a challenge to that because, after all, when you got superstar players, how do they work together? Especially when they all want to have the ball and score, 30 points a game, and are they willing to share it with others? And so I would think, there would be a lot of managing that would have to do. And so hats off to this coach. I'm not going to try to take away any of his accolades, but in the same sense, I always thought, but is he the best coach of all times? And so I thought, if he became the coach of the Bucks and won a championship, it's hands down. He would be the greatest coach in the history of basketball. But now, in this day and age, as I continue to watch the Bucks have got the best team in the National Basketball Association. And to their coach, I just say, if you can get the job done this year, you are definitely the greatest coach to ever coach the game. Taking the poorest, the weakest team that I root for and make them champions. And I guess that's the thing. And when we're talking about, oh, poor me, I was only kind of given a little bit. Whereas over here, this person's given so much. Well, use the Bucks as an example. Take what little you have and make it into some kind of a championship. You can do it. And that's why God is entrusting all these talents to these various people, is because he believes that you can do it. He gives to one 5, he gives to another 2, he gives to another 1. But with all of them, it's just like, well, I'm only giving this to you because I believe that you're going to do a good job with it. And so here again, I'm not God to determine why he gave to the one more. But he says he gave them based on their ability. So obviously to the one who had the 5 talents, that he had an ability that was superior to the other 2. Now I'm not God, but if it were me, let's say that I had a lot of money and I thought, well, I got to go on a trip and I can't bring all this money with me. And so I'm trying to think, who in the community would I entrust this money? Who are 3 people that I would entrust this money to, knowing that I can leave and I can sleep at night, knowing that they're doing a good job managing it? And so I think, well, maybe there's this person who has got a master's degree in business and has had a lot of experience banking and banking internationally and has got a very good track record, and saying, hey, I can give these 5 talents to this person, knowing that this person's going to do a good job, better than probably I can do myself. Well, here again, I'm not God, so I can say, no, trust me, this person will do a lot better than myself. Well, then the second person, well, it's maybe a person who's a merchant downtown, has had, some education. It's a person who's had this business for a couple of generations now in the family. And this person is a good manager. This person has run a good business to where people have a lot of confidence in it. This person's not, understands, as far as income and expenses and, just doing a good job. Has a way with people, saying, okay, well, I think I will entrust 2 of the talents to this person, knowing that, well, eventually when I come back, this person will have done a good job with it. But then with that last talent, I kind of think, well, who do I give that to? Well, maybe there's somebody who just graduated from high school and has been my paper boy all these years and has done a good job delivering papers and has always collected the money and apparently, graduated from high school and did fairly well in school and did pretty good in their math and business classes. And so I think, well, here's this person starting off. I'll give this person one talent, thinking, well, this person doesn't really have any experience or not much experience under one's belt, but I have the confidence to believe that this person will do a good job. Okay, so that's, what's being entrusted here. Okay, so the one with the 5 talents kind of seems to know what to do with it. And this person just goes to work with the 5 talents and does whatever it takes, and somehow is able to double. Takes the 5 talents and now makes it into 10 talents. And then the same with the person with the 2 talents, seems to know what to do with it. And so here again, this person doubles it and takes the 2 talents and makes it into 4 talents. But then, here's the person with the 1 talent, really was afraid. Isn't that one of the things when we think about life and even the Christian life is that a lot of times we don't do anything because we are afraid. We're afraid of what other people will think. We're afraid of failing, of losing what we have. And so I think about this time in my life. I remember I was a kid in Cub Scouts. And I would go over to this person's house who was our den mother. And I would go over there, and it was always a good program. We would learn some moral lesson, and then we would have some kind of a project. But I remember this one night, we were at their house, and we were having Cub Scouts. And here again, I date myself because I don't think that this even exists anymore, and I don't even think the materials used to make kites back then even exist today, or they don't make kites this way. But for that day and age, it was really cool. We made box kites. Box kites. They had a certain formation. Maybe if you're as old as me, oh yeah, I kind of remember those. Box kites. And so we were done with the meeting and we took our box kites home. And I just remember the next day, my friends and my brothers were so excited to get their kites out and flying the kites. It was in the spring, and so the wind was blowing. That's kind of the thing you do in the spring is you fly your kites, and they would fly them, and they would be so high, and we'd be running all over the place. But I didn't take my box kite out. I just thought there was something that was so cool, so unique about that box kite that I just wanted to preserve it. And so I just kept it in my room, thinking, well, I don't want to take it out. Probably the first time out, I'll break the kite, or it'll get lost. And I don't ever know whatever happened to the kite. It never did get flown even once. So what was the point? Even if that kite would have lasted just one day, I think that one day flying the box kite would have been so much more enjoyable than all the days of having it sit in my room. But I had the fear of it breaking or that I'd lose it, so I just kind of had the enjoyment of watching my brothers and all my friends fly their kites that day. And so that's the thing, is that we can't be afraid to use what God has given to us. God was very upset with that one steward who had the 1 talent. Why? It was because he didn't use it. I think if he would have gone out with that 1 talent and somehow worked the best that he could and tried his best and would have lost the talent, that the master would not have been displeased with him, saying, well, you know what? You really gave it a lot of thought, you planned, you worked hard, and it just didn't work out. But hey, I give you a lot of credit for trying. And And that's the thing that I find with a lot of people in life. The first time when they try something, they maybe fail at it. But then they learn from that. They go back to the drawing board and they try again. And sometimes they fail. I hate using that word fail because I always think failing is just a process of eventually succeeding, because that's what happens if you continue to persist, is that every time you end up learning until finally you get it right. I can't help but watch some of the presidential debates and listening to some of these people who are very accomplished in many ways. They obviously have taken their talents, and you see how they have multiplied these talents in many ways. And so it's rather admirable. But, a number of them would say about how, well, they start off in life and, in business or whatever, and they just fell flat on their face. In a sense, as far as the world would say, failure. But they didn't give up. They got up and they tried again to where now they've earned billions. But that's another reason why we don't want to try. And here again, I'm a pastor of a church, and as much as the church has got a lot of wonderful people in it, a lot of nurturing people, a lot of people who are there to encourage and compliment, but in just about every church that I've ever served, there's always somebody, or here and there, that if you try and whatever it's not quite up to standards, they'll make it a point to tell you just what a rotten job he did. And so there's people where I've tried to encourage them to say, hey, you should try this. You'd be good at it. And so they try it, and then all of a sudden somebody comes up and makes a smart comment, and then so this person then comes up to me just saying, don't ever ask me again. I won't try. And that's one of the most discouraging times in my ministry, when finally get a person that I've been working on to get up and to do something, and then somebody goes and smashes them. It's just like, no, we're here to build everybody up, but that's why a lot of people won't try. Because they know that if they slip up somehow, this person's going to come along and point it out. But then a lot of times people say, well, I know that this person exists, and I will hear the comment, but I'm not going to let that deter me. I'm just going to continue on, because after all, I'm not going about this because of this person. I'm going about my life and ministry in the church because of what God has called me to do, or called us to do. And so that's sometimes with the whole church, is that sometimes a church can be paralyzed with fear, saying, we can't do this. Look how much it would cost. Or whatever. That's what Jesus came. He touches the person who is a paralytic, to have them all of a sudden be freed and to rise up and to do the good work that God has given to them to do. And I think that's sometimes what God has to do in the church, is to touch the body of Christ and heal it, to say, come on. Don't be paralyzed by fear. Get up and get something done. And so that's the thing, is that God gives to us talents, and everybody has at least one. And then there comes that time where he will come back and will give an accounting of, where we have to give an accounting, saying, God, this is what you've blessed me with. I maybe just have the one talent, but this is how I used it, and this is what I have to show. It may not be a whole lot. And then the rewards come as well. When we see when God can entrust somebody with something, then pretty soon he can entrust them with more, and then more. But if God can't trust us with a little piggy bank, how is he going to trust us with being the managers or being the chief financial operator of a corporation? And so do you see where, just like our shoes, we have to grow into them. When it comes to things, it's that, well, as we grow and develop, then we're able to take on more and more. We've developed wisdom and knowledge and skills to be able to say, well, now I can be the head of this outfit, or I can coach the team, so to speak, because I now have an understanding of everything works. And so I just remember when I was in college, I had this roommate, and he went off to college to be the sports star, football and baseball, and he was a standout in high school, and so he went off to college to mainly play sports. He wasn't a bad student, and as far as going off to school to be the star athlete, well, that he was. He really did excel. And he not only excelled individually, but, well, his 1 year, the football team was co-national champions, Division III. And so his father would call on the phone, or he would call his father or his mother. And I think a lot of times they just kind of wanted to get the sports update. How did practice go? How did the game go? You know, all these kinds of things. And not that I was really eavesdropping. I couldn't help but hear him talk because I was in the room reading my book trying to study. But it was back in the day when we had the landlines in our dormitory rooms with the cord, and so the cord would wrap outside of the door, and then there was this stairway going down, and so he had the cord, the cord and the door shut, and he was talking on the stairs, but I could still overhear or hear what he was talking about. And he wasn't talking about sports, and he wasn't talking about his classes. Because I went to a religious school, we were going to a religious school, all of a sudden he got turned on to being a Christian. And he just started going to worship, and he started going to Bible study and being part of different Christian things. And as he, all of a sudden he was asked, well, could you, speak at one of the chapel services, or could you help out this way? And so he would, and all of a sudden he did. And then all of a sudden he noticed that God was blessing him with more and more abilities to serve in the spiritual life of the campus. And it was just so exciting to see him blossom and bloom. But he was just impressing upon his family, saying, well, we got to be more than just nominal Christians. Going to church at Christmas and Easter. We got, it's something that we do all the time. It's every day that we're Christians. This is who we are. It's not like we can just take off our Christian cape and put it in a closet until next Sunday. No, we're always Christians. This is how we're living our lives, and we're taking all of what God has given to us and doing our very best. First of all, trying and not being afraid to fail, but trying and just asking God to bless us. And sometimes those things that we really are hoping, don't work out. But, don't beat yourself up too much, because God is going to say, well done, good and faithful servant. I entrusted you with this. You did your very best. And that's all I was asking of you. And so let us all be those wonderful stewards of God's creation, of God's Word, and of His church this day.
You have been watching To Know Christ with Reverend Jeff Pedersen, pastor of the Lutheran Church of Peace in Platteville, Wisconsin. The worship schedule for the Lutheran Church of Peace is Saturday night at 6 p.m. and Sunday morning at 9 a.m. A collection of Pastor Pedersen's Christian books can be found at Amazon.com. His latest book is called Sharing Our Faith in the Covenant of God's Grace. Thank you for watching, and tune in again next week for To Know Christ.